Hello, chess friends, and welcome to Qxh of Chess channel, and welcome to simply the best of the best chess match that can happen in the world. Welcome to the TCEC Season 27 Super Final between the two most powerful chess engines in the world, between Stockfish 17 and Leela C0. So, this match is a little bit different because in this Premier Division of the TCEC Season 27, the engines had, first of all, 1 hour on the clock plus 6 seconds increment per move. In this grand final, in this super final, Leela C0 and Stockfish have 2 hours on the clock plus 12 seconds increment per move, which is really a huge difference. You see also in one particular moment, Stockfish will lose about 40 and something minutes for one particular move, which is really crazy. And in this super final so far, Stockfish is in the lead. And I mentioned before this final that this could be a clear run for Stockfish, but things have turned around. Leela C0 is back in the game, and Leela is only 1 point behind Stockfish after 11 rounds that they have played so far. The current 12th game is going on. Stockfish is playing with the white pieces. I'm not sure what will be the result, but we're starting now this epic and I would say immortal grand final with the game 8, in which really crazy things happen. So the game 8, I think, will be a historical one, because here you witness, I don't know, perfect chess. First of all, such a brutal, such an amazing attack by Stockfish with the white pieces, but then one of the greatest defensive ideas of all time performed by Leela C0. And it's also worth to mention, this is a moment in which Leela C0 took over and actually got back into the event, because here actually Leela C0 won the pairings. If you're maybe not familiar with the concept of this TCEC competition, the engines have to play a pairing of 2 games in which they play the same openings, of course, with the white pieces, but then also the reverse game with the black pieces. And actually Leela C0 won this pairing that I wanted to show you today. So put your seatbelts on and enjoy in really one of the greatest chess games of all time. So with the white pieces, the fish opened with the move d4, and as I said, the reverse game Leela C0 won. Look what happened in this crazy game. So after move d4, knight Qf6 here by Leela, we have now knight Qf3 by the fish, e6, and now after bishop to g5, we have now the amazing Torre attack. I'm a big fan of the Torre attack because the Torre attack can become a positional battle, but we can become also a tactical battle. The main, I would say, concept of the Torre attack is in some lines, if black is not playing careful enough to even in some lines pick up with the knight with your bishop, and if you can do it, then you can also of course mess up the pawn structure here in front of black's king. One of the other positional ideas is to get the central breakthrough with the move e4. You pick up the knight, maybe if bishop to e7 or something happens, then you pick up the knight in some lines, and then you have a very powerful center. You can also maybe in some lines play the move c4, but you get an expansion in the center of the board. So I think the Torre attack is useful against I don't know, maybe this Nimzo Indian ideas where you don't want to play maybe the Nimzo Indian with the white pieces, where you play this counter Nimzo Indian setup with the move knight to f3, and then you put more pressure against this knight. So I would say really a beautiful opening for sure. So we have now the move b6 by the fish. Now comes this idea e4. So Leela has now tough time to defend this position. Immediately in the center, e5 is now the huge threat. Here Leela continues with h6. Stockfish simply takes. Queen to f6 leads now into this position in which, okay, black has now the bishop pair on the board, but the issue is that this bishop usually is supposed to be somewhere here, and it's a little bit blocked by its own queen. Now the queen will still have a tough time to get back into the game. You will probably play a couple more moves in order to get the queen back, and still e5 goals are working here for white. Bishop to b4 doesn't make sense because a calm c3 will happen. So here I think white has a tiny little edge already in the opening stage. Bishop to d3 by the fish, bishop to b7, knight from b to d2. So see also in this particular opening, white is slightly faster in development. White has already brought 3 minor pieces out, has now the central control of the pawns. The queen is a little bit misplaced. I would say it's a good compensation for the lost bishop pair in the early stage of the opening. We have now the move d6, queen to e2. Stockfish is preparing now, of course, also to play queenside castling, not to play kingside castling, and then launch a flank attack with g4, h4, and similar stuff. a6 by Leela, and Stockfish plays now queenside castling. Knight to d7, king to b1. Tiny little improvement of the king, first of all securing everything, and then when the time is right to launch an attack. e5 here by Leela. Leela wants to have clarified situation in the center of the board. Leela doesn't want to, of course, tolerate this progressive and mobile pawn structure in the center of the board. E5 here by Leela, and now Stockfish plays again a calm move c3. In some lines, if you play maybe here e takes d4, then c takes d4 leads into complication because of a potential e5 breakthrough, queenside castling. So far, to get maybe out of the attack is not possible because your pawn is weak here on a6. So far, again, here Leela c0 has a tough time to defend his position. So after move c3, here Leela played now bishop to e7. And I would mention this is now the last move that was pre-arranged by the organizer. If you're maybe not familiar also with these games in the AI chess world, the organizers are setting up positions. Then, of course, the engines have to play this position. And as I mentioned in the beginning, Leela won the reverse game with the white pieces, so it's not like Stockfish has to play a different position. Both engines have to play the same position, and now bishop to e7 is actually not the best of continuations here for black. The better choice is to go with g6, and then after something like h4, then to play h5, and then you should go with your bishop like this. Here the bishop is very active now, and now when the knight is on c4, maybe finally you can play a calm queenside castling. You have still a control of the e5 score, so this is the way to go. This is, I think, here the best way to proceed for black. What you shouldn't do is again e takes d4, c takes d4 leads, as I said, into this complication. After c3, we have now bishop to e7, and from this point on, the engines are calculating the position for themselves. We have bishop to c2, and look at this. Here in this particular moment, look at this. Stockfish had 2 hours on the clock, and now Stockfish used almost 48 minutes just for one move. In this particular game, for Stockfish used now 48 moves just in order to play a beautiful theoretical novelty, bishop to c2. Stockfish says this is the best way here to proceed. In one game that I see in the database, Viktor Korchnoi against Anatoly Karpov in the legendary match from 1972 played knight to c4. So Viktor Korchnoi won the game against Anatoly Karpov with this idea knight to c4. Stockfish says bishop to c2 is even slightly better here, and now we have a finally new game in this opening. We have now the move b5. Stockfish plays now knight to f1 with the idea to get the knight here and then to hop on this beautiful square on f5. g6, Leela prevents it immediately. Here the knight on f5 will not happen, and now h4 here by the fish, again trying h5, and then if g5 happens, then knight to g3, knight to f5 again with the same positional idea. That's why Leela plays h5 itself here. It's not allowing, of course, this potential progress by white on the king side. Knight to g5 by the fish, but now Stockfish is using another square on the board. And that's the issue about this move bishop to e7 instead of playing g6 and getting this bishop on this side of the board. So now if this bishop, of course, would be already on h6, Stockfish would not have this option to play knight to g5. But okay, so far for knight to g5, Leela finally took risky choice. I was really surprised that Leela c0 allowed here Stockfish to continue with this very mobile pawn structure in the center of the board, but now Leela puts more pressure against the center with the move c5. What should you do? After d takes c5, the issue here for black is that you cannot take with your pawn. You would love maybe here to connect somehow your pawns on the queen side, maybe creating here a pawn majority attack with these 3 pawns against these 2 pawns. But after knight to e3, the game becomes, I think, a little bit complicated. The d5 square is really weak in black's position, and the issue is that the knight is somehow out of game. It doesn't have really good squares now to jump. So that's why knight to c5 by Leela, which makes now a little bit white attack much harder. After knight to e3 and knight to e6, great defensive moves here by Leela c0 so far. This move knight to e6 is actually preventing now finally this move knight to d5 that we have discussed. Although it's a weak square, but finally you have attacked this knight, which is also very unpleasant, and now you can proceed with bishop to d5 after something like e takes d5. Of course, this would be an equal game with opposite color bishops. Nothing dramatic is going on now anymore on the board. So that's why knight to e6, really good move, which forces now reaction by the fish, and the fish plays now the move bishop to b3. For instance, if you try knight to g5, h takes g5, queen to g5, bishop to d5 leads again into complications where you have to maybe trade off the bishops here, and then after knight to d5, look at this. White continues the game with a much powerful minor piece. The knight in this position is much better than black's dark square bishop. The black dark square bishop doesn't have good squares, and now in the next couple of moves we can expect, of course, moves like f4, knight to c7 is a threat. Even if you castle king side, then f3, g4 could happen, could open the position, but I think the normal f4 here is devastating. You have to now maybe play queen to g4, then the bishop is hanging. So many tactical options. So the point is that here knight to g5 is actually not working because of the d5 weakness. Stockfish really attacked now the main weakness in black's camp. That's why Leela C0 gets out of this mess and plays now kingside castle. We have now f3 by the fish, knight to d4, we have queen to d3, and now knight takes b3. Also tricky. A tricky idea here by Leela. The issue after knight to b3 is that white cannot take with the queen. In order to keep the structure intact, you would love to, of course, to play queen to b3 without messing up your pawn structure in front of your king. But actually, after queen to b3, black could get really decisive time in the attack. Black could go with this a5 goal, and now look at this after g4. Probably white would continue also with the kingside attack, then a4, and you see you get an extra tempo. That's now the huge issue after queen to b3. When the pawn is here, then you don't have such an important tempo now in this opposite side attack battle, where of course the kings are on opposite sides. So now after move a4, black gets a decisive tempo after queen to d3, and now a3, suddenly the game becomes also very dangerous here for white. So that's why a takes b3 here by the fish, the correct move. Now the whole concept with a5 is not working, because look at this, suddenly white is faster on the attack with the move g4. Really huge difference in calculations here. Then you can maybe try your goal a4, but then we can take, even if you pass through the move that we have seen previously, then there is this defensive idea, rook to h2. Even if you pick it up, look at this, rook takes b2, you're trying maybe somehow to attack the position further, but now knight to g4, look at this, you have to maybe trade off even the queens. Now this knight is coming, this pawn is hanging, this pawn is protected. So look at this, white is controlling the whole board. There is still maybe an attack on this side of the board, so nothing can happen. This pawn is weak anyway, so it's, I think, completely winning position here for white. So that's why after a takes b3, Leela tried queen to f4. We have now the move g3. This is a great move here by the fish, which forces now again a reaction by black. But after queen takes g3, notice now with this pawn sacrifice, Stockfish accomplished that finally the g file is opened. And that's how you play this opposite side attack games, where the kings are on opposite sides. So the basic goal is now to open files. Who is faster on the attack will probably win the game, and that's exactly what happened. Queen to g3, and Stockfish now continues with an amazing knight to f5. Opens up now simply the g file further. We have now g takes f5, which in the beginning my Stockfish engine at home evaluates as an inaccuracy. Here, my Stockfish at home suggests that you should play queen to e5, and then after something like f4, then queen to f6 has to be played, because you cannot play queen to f4 because of knight to e7, or you cannot even play here bishop to e4 after move f4 because of this knight to e7 deflection, and now after queen to e7 again you would lose the piece. But after queen to e5, Stockfish says here after move f4 that you should play here queen to f6, and that this position can be played now finally by black. But I think we should not trust always Stockfish evaluations, not in any game, because sometimes Stockfish doesn't understand some positional concepts. We have discussed it many times. I've analyzed now really many games, more than 700 games in AI chess, and I've noticed that sometimes Stockfish doesn't understand really the, I would say, humanish positional ideas that I think humans would understand. And that's what I would always like to say. A human and Stockfish 17 are always stronger than just Stockfish 17, because we have a certain positional understanding that sometimes the own engines don't have, especially in block positions. I've talked about many times. We saw in one beautiful game in a Benoni, in which Leela C0 destroyed Stockfish with the black pieces, and Stockfish somehow locked its own rook. Stockfish understood that the rook should be really active, but it wasn't really active. It was simply on on black side of the board, but it was simply locked by its own pawn and it couldn't get into the game. So sometimes Stockfish doesn't understand this position ideas. But after knight to f5, Leela finds a different idea. Instead of this move queen to e5, Leela says, show me what you got. G takes f5. I will take the knight, but of course Stockfish continues now with the attack on the g file. We have now queen to h4. Leela is grabbing more material and there's not so much that can be done. What should now white do? The main attacking goal could be maybe even queen to c3. This wasn't played in the game e5. It was played by the fish, but let's see options. Even if you try, I don't know, queen to c3, Leela says in this particular position that it's perfectly fine here to play the move queen to g5, sacrificing simply more material. But now we will reach this position in which Leela has enough compensation, even a better compensation, I would say, for the lost queen. Leela would have 2 bishops and a rook for the loss of a queen. Still, there are maybe some attacking chances with queen to c7, but again, Leela says this is perfectly fine. Bishop to e4, f takes e4, then after f takes e4, rook to d6. But now after rook from f to d8, this is a playable position. Probably this game would end with a draw, probably with a perpetual check by white's queen, because now finally the pieces would be off the board and Leela would have here enough material to continue. Even here, what you could try from I don't know, from white's perspective here is in discovered attack with knight to e6, pardon me, but this is not working. After king to h7 and rook to g7, you get one check, but now after king to h8, suddenly you don't have a good move. This knight is out of game, even if you try it on knight to d4, then f takes e4. Look at this, f takes e4, bishop to e4 is winning the game suddenly for black. So the only way to make progress, we saw queen to c3 not working, knight to e6 not working. The only way to somehow spice up the game is to play this ultra aggressive here that Stockfish move played, of course, the move e5. This is the way to go, because now this pawn is hanging. Stockfish wants now to include the queen into the game and wants into lines, of course, to deliver checkmate. But Leela continues with bishop to g5. Stockfish plays now bishop to f5. Pardon me, queen takes the bishop on f5. The issue is here, you cannot play the bishop to c8 here in order to protect the pawn on f5. So Leela played really correct move with bishop to g5. The issue is about bishop to c8 that then the knight is coming finally into the game, and now the bishop gets disconnected from the defense of the pawn, and then after king to h8 you play knight to f8, bishop to f8, and then suddenly the position is collapsing after rook to g1, rook to h1. Look at this, the heavy artillery is attacking now both of the important files here, so it's game over here for black. So you see here after move e5, as we mentioned, Leela played the correct move, bishop to g5. Stockfish continues now with queen to f5. This bishop is hanging. Black cannot play here the move f6. Seems tempting and seems like black is defending this position, but now after e takes f6 and I don't know, king to h8 to get out of this g file mess, then rook to g5 is actually defendable with maybe here, pardon me, bishop to f3 here. It's not a good position anymore for black because of king to a1. You get simply out of the attack, and the issue is you cannot pick up the rook because you get this one, rook to g7, and there's simply no defense after queen to h7. What you could try is maybe here rook to a7 to cover somehow here the 7th rank, but now rook to g6, and now after queen to g4, finally you have to now sacrifice some material. Maybe you can try something else, but now when the queen is taken, queen to f2 should be still winning for white, I would say, because this pawn is weak, the king is naked here, this pawn is protected. You may be trying something like this, but still this rook is holding the position, and it's, I think, a different story now. The king is naked. That's, I think, now the huge issue here for black. So after queen to f5, we saw f6 is not working here for black. So Leela played now a beautiful rook from f to e8. The idea about this move is somehow maybe even to get the king out of this tactical mess. And now Stockfish, of course, continues with rook to g5. We have now king to f8, and here many of us, I think, would play moves like rook to h5, but actually rook to h5 is not a winning position suddenly for white here, because after rook to e5, you can maybe pick up this rook, and after something like d takes e5, okay, you can also pick up the queen, but now after bishop to f3, again, black can defend its position. Black is down the exchange, but has enough pawns here still on the board. The king is now, I don't know, not so endangered. This rook is also hanging, so you lose another tempo. So That's why I think not a winning anymore game here for white. So after king to f8, Stockfish again finds the only good attacking idea, which is now the brilliant queen to f6. The idea about this move, I don't know, if you try something like, I don't know, d takes e5, then you get checkmated. Queen to h8, and then rook to e5 is a really beautiful checkmate picture that we have here. So that's why Leela has to be careful. After queen to f6, Leela plays now again the only defensive move, rook to e6, but now Stockfish plays a brilliant rook to g8. We have now king to g8, and now after queen to h4, it seems so that white is winning the game for sure. But now Leela found again a beautiful bishop to f3, and believe me or not, my Stockfish engine at home says, Leela, this is a bad move, but actually here Stockfish missed a huge defensive idea that Leela C0 found, and it's a beautiful fortress. This is the way to go. Stockfish suggests that you should play d takes e5, but the issue about d takes e5 is that after queen to h5, you cannot pick up this pawn on f3, which is very important. This pawn is somehow holding still these two pawns, and now the queen and rook could create some kind of an attack. In this scenario, when Leela c0 played the brilliant bishop to f3, actually there's not a winning chance anymore for white. Look at this. After rook to g1, rook to g6, rook takes g6, we have now f takes g6, we have e takes d6, and it seems so again that white is winning the game because of this powerful passer on the d5, but Leela had everything under control. Bishop to g4, queen to e7. Stockfish is of course preparing d7 and d8, the promotion. Leela c0 plays now calm rook to f8. We have now the move d7, and now finally bishop takes d7. After queen to d7, here actually it's a completely drawish position because Leela c0 builds a fortress with the move rook to f5. Really great defensive strategy here by black. After queen to e6, the check. Okay, Leela c0 protects this pawn. Of course, this pawn is more important. Now, after queen to a6, notice now that in this particular scenario, white cannot create a pass pawn. White cannot do anything. This rook is holding this pawn, and the queen cannot get access to the king. The rook is protected by the pawn is protected by the king, and white doesn't have any more winning chances. Although my Stockfish engine home evaluates in the beginning this position is +3 in white's favor. That's what I mean about a human and Stockfish 17 are much stronger than just Stockfish 17, because maybe if a human would play combined with Stockfish, this position wouldn't even allow maybe to reach this fortress position, because I think a human can better understand the fortress idea. Now Stockfish, look at this. After queen to a6, king to g7, we have king to a2, king to h7, queen to. We have now just a repetition of moves. Leela just repeats king to g7, king to h7. I don't know, queen to c8. Look at this. Stockfish cannot really find any winning chance anymore, and now. Suddenly Stockfish has to, of course, start to push the pawns in order to avoid the 50 move rule here. Now after move king to h7, I've also analyzed now this line, even if you try, I don't know, something like queen to b6, the issue is you cannot go into the game like this to create yourself a pass pawn, because black will simply take, and actually now suddenly black is winning the game. So this tactic is not working. So that's why after king to h7, queen to c8, we have now king to g7. Again, Leela just repeats moves, king to g7 and king to h7. Here we have again a repetition, so nothing can happen. This rook is of course holding this pawn, and Stockfish cannot create any passers anymore on the b file. We have queen to d8, again a repetition by Leela, and now instead of this move queen to d8, you could maybe try to go with your king towards the king side, but again it's not working. You just repeat moves, and okay, white will deliver of course a couple of checks, but you cannot deliver check here, and again just a repetition, and it's a completely drawish position here for both sides. So that's why queen to d8, but now the game was prolonged till many moves, because Stockfish just forced thought that it could be winning here, but Stockfish just repeated here the moves, repeated this checks against black's king. Leela just plays king to h7, king to g7, doesn't want to risk anything, and now here one particular moment Stockfish had to of course play also pawn move, because in order to avoid again the 50 move rule here. After a couple more moves, we have now the move b3, but now nothing can happen. Leela just repeated moves. We move this a little bit faster, of course. We understand that this is now completely drawish position. And you see also the evaluation bar. In one moment, Stockfish will realize that it's completely draw. So here, after a couple more moves, let's just move a little bit this position further, because it's really a beautiful fortress idea here by Leela C0. But okay, it's a little bit boring, of course, but Stockfish is, of course, trying somehow to win this game. But now finally, look at this, the evaluation bar is dropping, and this is now very a beautiful, spectacular thematic draw in the TCEC season 27 super final. So great tactics by Leela C0 here. Great tactics, I would say, also by Stockfish in the beginning. How Stockfish is always finding this devastating attacks just in order somehow to open a position, but Leela found really immortal, really incredible defensive idea here. Great game, great round 8 of the TCEC season 27 super final. So okay, this will not be it, of course, for the super final. Stockfish is still in the lead, but if Leela continues to defend like this with the black pieces in this pre-arranged openings, maybe something could happen. And in the next video of this of the super final, we're going to cover the game 10. The game 10 belongs really into the immortal category, so this will be in our next video of this computer chess championship of this TCEC competition, where you see well, incredible tactics. This was our first game from the super final, and I hope that you enjoyed this really amazing and spectacular fortress idea here by Leela C0. So okay, I hope that you enjoyed this game. If you want to see some other spectacular immortal chess games like this, check out our Come to Chess Games Play by Computers. Here's the link of our playlist, and if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.